So hello, good evening, and welcome to a new food4Rhino webinar. We are very happy to have today with us Japhy Walton from McNeel, from Robert McNeel Associates, and Tobias Hathorn and Philippe Bidot from Autodesk. And they are going to show us a new data exchange connector between Rhino and Revit. And also, I think it also works with other Autodesk products like Inventor. And yeah, we are so happy to have one more interoperability solution for Rhino and Revit, and especially this one made directly by the developers of Revit. And yeah, I think Philippe will start with a short presentation, and then Japhy and Tobias will do a live demo. Remember that there is a chat. On the right side, there is a chat panel on the right side of your screen, and feel free to post any questions there. We will try to answer this immediately during the webinar, or some questions, if they require a longer answer, we will wait for the final 10-15 minutes. And remember also that this webinar is being recorded. It will be available on this same link right after it finishes. So welcome, Philippe, Tobias, Japhy, and feel free to start with your presentation.
All right, wonderful. Give me a second to share screen. And Carlos, are we good on that?
Yes,
make sure we can
yes.
See. Wonderful. So yeah, thanks so much, Carlos, and the whole team at McNeel for having us on this webinar and hosting this today. It's been really awesome working with you all over the past couple of months. As Carlos mentioned, my name is Philippe Bidot. I work on Autodesk platform team. So today, myself and a couple of others who we'll introduce here are going to dive into Autodesk data exchanges, one of our newer interoperability products meant to help streamline your data sharing workflows across the different tools that you use to deliver AEC projects today. Before jumping into the details in the demo, just a quick overview of our safe harbor statement. We're going to be making some forward-looking statements. Don't make purchasing decisions based solely on those statements. All right. And our speakers for today. So I'm going to let Japhy and Tobias introduce themselves. They're going to do most of the demo work here, and then I'll jump in towards the end and cover a little bit of what is on our roadmap, how to get access to what they're going to be demoing today. But I will hand it over to Japhy from McNeel.
Hi, Japhy Walton. I'm an application specialist with McNeel. I support Rhino, Grasshopper, Rhino inside Revit. Have a background in architecture and fabrication. And just thanks for everybody for helping share this novel workflow. And Tobias?
Thank you. Nice to be here today with everyone. I'm Tobias Hathorn. I spent the first 5 years of my career as an architect, and then joined Autodesk working on the Revit team. And now I'm working on the platform team with Philippe. And we're starting to look at data and getting data out of files and out of source applications and making it neutral so that it can be read into a variety of applications, some Autodesk apps and some non-Autodesk apps like Rhino and Grasshopper. So yeah, eager to share that with you today. Thanks for having us.
Cool, thanks guys. And like I said, my name's Philippe Bidot. I work on Tobias's team. My background is more on the design and manufacturing side, but I've been working with our AEC platform teams for the past 4 years. I've been at Autodesk for about 7 years. Cool, so let's jump in. So like I mentioned, the team Tobias and I work on develops cloud services that integrate data across a variety of our different tools as well as third-party tools, so you can curate and share your data better. As many of you live and breathe through every day, there are many challenges with collaboration across AEC. It's very fragmented. There are a few number of reasons why this happens. First and foremost, there are a lot of tools, a lot of vendor offerings that make sharing data inconsistent across the board. This is even occurs between Autodesk products, but this is definitely the case where there are many Autodesk, non-Autodesk products that are used and they don't talk well to each other. So many customers many of you spend a lot of time-consuming effort to manage those interoperability tools that you use. And oftentimes it's taking away, time from creative and differentiating work that you want to be working on. And it can be costly to maintain all the different plugin systems and inconsistent kind of plugin management systems that occur across the tools. Second, just the reality of how we work and how we work within the AEC industry. We work in a collaborative world where delivering a project requires multiple firms, multiple stakeholders. So on top of the tool fragmentation, we have to manage cross-company workflows. Managing who has access to what data is complex, and that becomes top of mind for probably many of you when you need to protect IP and really only share the data that's needed by your stakeholders. Lastly, projects aren't getting any simpler. The amount of bespoke requirements, the number of collaborators on those projects is only increasing. And given the tool fragmentation, this makes keeping stakeholders up to date even more difficult and costly. And many of you who are looking to automate many of your processes need more effective and more connected data across those tools and services. So our primary mission with data exchanges is to streamline data sharing across the tools and companies you work with, so you can reduce time spent during your design iterations, reduce the risk of using out-of-date data, and enhance your team's overall operational efficiency. So first and foremost, what we're doing is we're striving to simplify and standardize data sharing across the tools you use and create a more connected ecosystem of applications. And we're not just talking about one-to-one specific integrations, but support for many-to-many application data workflows so that you can reduce onboarding, the cognitive load that comes with sharing and managing shared data across many different tools. Second, through data exchanges, we want to make it easier for you to curate data that you share through the cloud. That means not only enabling individuals and teams to share and access data from wherever you work, but also enabling you to curate your data in a secured way across firms so you can protect your IP and reduce data noise with stakeholders. Lastly, what's important around connected data is that data exchanges maintain a durable and reactive connection to your source data, meaning that consumers of your data spend less time on rework, on manual updates, and also enabling downstream services to connect into your live data, into your source data, so that they can be reactive, and so you can start to open the door to powerful automations. So what we're doing at Autodesk is we are cracking open the very, very application-specific and proprietary file formats, and we are storing that data in the cloud, making it more accessible and open to all of you, so that no matter what discipline and no matter what tool you're working with, you can start to collaborate in a more cohesive and standardized way across the tools you use. Whether these be Autodesk tools, whether these be those third-party or other applications that you might use, we want to enable you to be able to curate the way you share data across those tools. And these you'll see kind of later on when Tobias goes Power Automate workflow. This includes design applications like Revit and Rhino, but also business process applications. So just to sum it up, with data exchanges, we want to help you share the right data with the right person and right people in the right context, and make sure that you have access to that granular level of data. So in today's webinar, I'm going to hand it off to Japhy and Tobias in a second. They're going to really focus on our Revit and Rhino connectors. Like I mentioned earlier, these are not just one-to-one integrations. These are connectors that actually can connect into many other applications. But for today's webinar, we're going to focus on workflows between Rhino and Revit. So you'll see they'll be working from their own laptops, remote collaboration, and you can imagine they're working across disciplines and across different companies. As we go through these workflows, feel free to jump in with questions. Maybe some are already populating on the YouTube chat, but ask questions around, what's available today, what you might be seeing that you have questions on, and we'll also cover, limitations, upcoming enhancements. Like I said, we'll cover some of those in the roadmap, some exciting things like parameters integration with Rhino and Grasshopper that'll allow you to easily write parameters and move them between these two applications. And then, time permitting, I hope we have some time, we'll get into a quick demo of the Inventor connector, our Microsoft Power Automate connector, and then quick overview demo of the Dynamo and Grasshopper connectors, which are in a public beta. Just to let you know what we're going to be showing today with the Revit Rhino connectors, those are accessible on our App Store. I will post a link and cover that later. Those are in a tech preview, so you can go and access those today, as well as the others that you see on the list. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Tobias, and let's kick off this demo.
Awesome. Thank you, Philippe. Let me share my screen. And I'm using Revit 2023.1. And just want to make that clear, that's the only place where the data exchange connector for Revit works. We'll be issuing a data exchange connector for Revit 2024 soon, but pending the release of Revit 2024. I want to set the stage of the workflow that Japhy and I will be going through. You can imagine I'm architect of record working on this larger project. And I'm in an overall view just to show you, the kind of size and the number of elements that are in this Revit model. So I'll just do a big crossing selection so you can see we've got, some 10,000 elements that are in this model. And data exchanges are intended to share just the subset of this large model with your collaborators. So Japhy and I don't work at the same company. We're different disciplines. I might be the architect of record and he might be a specialized canopy fabricator, design and fabrication shop. So, it might not be appropriate for him to have the entirety of this Revit file for him to access. So I've curated a view using a section box and Revit's visibility controls so that I'm just going to share context with him so that he can design a canopy to span this courtyard. And I'll do another crossing window and see that we're down to, some 2,300 elements that are in this view. And I'm going to share this with Japhy. So we've got a data exchange connector, which is a plugin. And I'll open this. We have some pre-baked exchanges here in case things go south with the cloud connection. So that's what those are. But if I were just starting a new connection with Japhy, I would go ahead and create a new data exchange. And this kind of walks you through the process of doing that because I'm going to put this data exchange in Autodesk Docs. And, we get a pre-populated name here based on the view. And I'm going to change that to be canopy context. And I'm going to put an L suffix on this because we're doing this live. And what I'm going to do is choose where I want to put that exchange in Autodesk Docs. So this is a project that Japhy and I have, and this is a folder that we're sharing. And then these are specific folders to indicate these are things that he should have access and ownership of, and these are things that I should have access and ownership of. So I have my Revit file stored here, and he has his Rhino file stored there. So our source files don't have to cross privacy boundaries, but the data exchanges can. Just these subsets can be shared. So I'll choose to put this exchange in Japhy's folder, and I get a nice little preview here of what's going to be included. And I'm just going to click Create Exchange. And Revit's going to run through the process of doing that. While it creates that, I'll come over here and show you what the docs experience of these exchanges look like. So in Japhy's folder, we've got those. You can see my new exchange is processing right now. We've got these pre-baked ones with the PB suffix. And if I open that, you can see a nice web viewable preview here of what's included in that exchange. And so you just get a sense of what this is going to look like as Japhy loads this into Rhino. And that's what I'm going to set him up with. I'm just going to share this URL with him so he can go and review it ahead of time and then load it up in his Rhino connector. So with that, Japhy, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Tobias. All right. Everybody see my screen?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, so here's the Rhino, and I've already loaded my data exchange app. So now I'm going to initiate here. Make sure I have a ACC account, and now I have my data exchange, similar to the interface that Tobias is working with. I'll load my data exchange.
Before you go on, Japhy, I actually don't see your screen, and I might be the only one, but can I get a confirmation from maybe Philippe or Carlos?
Yes, I don't see it either.
Yeah.
I think, but no one else now.
There we go.
There we go.
Sorry, I was looking at the wrong screen. Thank you.
No problem. To start from the top, I went to my data exchange up here. That popped up the Chrome, logged me in. I hit the load data exchange. Now I'm going to browse to my folder. Select my canopy. I could preview here. These exchanges are pretty quick. The upload's a little longer. That's why we have some pre-baked. So I'm going to go ahead and load this. And so typically, I guess, why, like I could see this really useful for a small contractor who's not going to have all the softwares. They have Rhino and an ACC account, and this is going to give them the ability to stay current. The previous methodology was kind of export for AutoCAD and then import your AutoCAD into Rhino. So that was a lot different result. So here we go. Layer to category mapping. I want so all my Revit categories are coming in as layers. In this case, the parameters, I might just put the identity data just to show that it's bringing it in. Brings in the layers. Let it finish. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn off these floor layers. And now we have our data exchange. If I select one of these objects, you can see they come in as blocks. Go to the properties. I have some type comments, type name, the keynote. So for this demonstration, I am a Rhino-based canopy manufacturer. I've created a massing of the canopy along with some calculated structural points that are rough calculations, and we're going to need these anchors in Revit coordinated with all the other roof objects. So this is where I'm going to create my data exchange. I'm going to call this schematic. Dash live. We have some options here. Everything in view. We're going to go by layer. This will coordinate my layers right here, which are the AIA-based layer convention that Revit uses to import and export. So I don't want all my layers. I want the mass and structural temp. I can see the preview. I'm going to create my data exchange. We'll save. And I'm going to send it back to Tobias.
Cool. Thank you, Japhy.
Yep.
So yes, now I'm back over in Revit, and Japhy has got the schematic canopy that he sent over to me. So I likewise will just go ahead and load that exchange from him into my Revit model. And I'll go ahead and click the load exchange button, and I'll also then have a chance to navigate and find that exchange that I'm interested in. So I'm in the correct Autodesk Docs project, jump into our food4Rhino folder, and go into my folder. And this is where I've got his canopy ready for me to load in. So I'll click that and let it translate. What I expect to happen is the canopy will come in of the correct category that he specified using those layers in Rhino. So the canopy itself should be the mass category, and then those structural connections, I think, are on the temp structural layer or something along those lines. And I have a filter set up here, so I should be seeing Japhy's canopy from the live version. And strangely, it's not coming in, or I don't see it. And that could be for a few reasons on Revit's massing displays or things of that nature. But what I will do now instead is just kind of jump over to the pre-baked one so we can take a look at it. Here we go. That's what I would expect to see. And I've got these pylons coming in, and you can see they're of the temporary structures category. And we've got the overall roof as well. And I'll zoom out a bit so we can see that I'm selecting it. It's of the mass category. So I've got both of those set up to display as blue in this case. Interestingly too, I can come to the selection, and I can select the elements that are of that exchange. So just kind of a quick selection method as well. And now that I've got that in, what I want to do is replace the temporary pylons with a Revit family for those structural connections. And so I've modeled those ahead of time. I'll just come into the BG menu and turn on the structural connections category. Click apply to verify. There we go. And so these are my higher fidelity looking model elements. And I want to send these over to Japhy so that he can update them in his model too. And what I'll do for that is create another exchange from the same view. And what I'll do in this case, again, just kind of keeping it as minimal as possible, call this canopy connections, and again, throw an L suffix on that. I can see it's going into Japhy's folder. I'm going to share the current view, but this time I'm going to choose to filter by category and choose to only include the structural connections category. So I can be extra specific about what I'm sending and extra brief in what data is being sent. So I'll click Create Exchange. It's going to save the Revit file in the background, and then it's going to start that upload process. So this being a larger file, it actually takes longer to save the file than it does to send the data exchange. So while that's happening, I'll go ahead and pass it back over to Japhy, assuming that I would send him a link to this new exchange so that he can load it up on his side. Back over to you, Japhy.
Okay. All right, so back in my project, I'm going to turn off my mask, my previous ones, go to my data exchanges, browse to my folder. And I could see this connection live right here. So I'm going to go ahead and load that. I could preview it. I don't know if the preview is done, so I'm just going to go ahead and load it. And it must not have been done. So I'm going to go ahead and get our cooking show pre-baked version, which is right here. And we should have our nice blocks. So once again, I'm going to use layers based on the categories. This time I want to bring in all the parameters because this is going to allow for some coordination. It's not necessary to use Grasshopper here, but for demonstration purposes, we're going to. So here we have all our parameters. And I had him put a comment to B on the one side and then A on the other. So like I said, we can draw stuff in Rhino, exchange it, but if you really want to do a lot of stuff with a couple of clicks, Grasshopper or Dynamo is going to be used. Grasshopper is my weapon of choice. So I've referenced the comments in the A, comments in the B, created this the script that uses a physics simulation that we can now we could flex a little bit, do some stuff. But at this point, I'm not quite ready to finalize. We want to look at doing making a change real quick so we could change the height of this. So I'm going to ask Tobias to change the height of those posts. So I'm going to send it back.
All right,
Tobias?
cool.
Yep.
All right. So Japhy's going to ask me to change these posts from 5 feet to 10 feet. And I'm going to select one, right click and choose select all instances in the project. It's going to grab all those that are here on this roof. And I'm just going to change the parameter here from 5 feet to 10 feet. So it's at the desired height. And at this point now, I just want to update that exchange that I sent him previously. And since Japhy, I think you're using the pre-baked one that we were using. Mm-hmm. So if I send you that update to this one, I believe that should work. Let me try that at least. And we can also try loading the first one again if necessary. And just so folks can see too, in Japhy's folder, this is the original canopy context that we shared. And then this is the connections file that we're sharing now as well. And you can see this has, just those connection points in it and nothing else. So you can be very specific and selective in what you're sharing. Back to Philippe's point about very curated workflows. Just sending the relevant elements for a particular workflow or for a particular task can really minimize the amount of data that you're sharing, and even minimize the amount of data that Japhy has to process on his side too. So Japhy, I'll pass this back over to you, and we can try updating that pre-baked one, and let me know how that works out for you.
All right. Go ahead and share. Refresh my data exchange. And this one is our Canopy connection share. So I'm going to go ahead and load the latest. That appeared to have done something. No, we're going to go to our backup one. So here I've actually done that transition where we're changing from the 5-foot to the 10-foot. Redo our refresh our grasshopper script, make any final things. Now from here, I'm actually going to panelize this. So this is a good opportunity to kind of bring out the fact that not all Rhino geometry is going to make it into Revit. Revit tolerances, people who are experienced in Revit know that when you import Autodesk or AutoCAD stuff with less than 1 millimeter, it's going to throw an error. And Rhino has a surfacing capabilities where you're doing doubly curved surfaces. The fundamental geometry kernel is much different. So in this case, I'm doing a triangular with it. I have control of the sizes. I'm adding in some additional information that is going to be used as this is going to be user text. So I'm adding in our color, our panel. I bake that in here. Actually, I should probably bake that one. Yeah, there we go. I bake that in here. That we can see that I have a panel color, size, description. There's approximately 1,500 panels. And I'm going to create a new data connection to exchanges. So I'm going to create the data exchange. Once again, we're going to go to layer. And I have a specialty equipment layer. And this is going to be a rather large data connection. So Tobias has a pre-baked one. There we go. And I'm going to send this back to Tobias.
Yeah, that's a pretty sweet example. And you're sending me 1,500 or so panels? Is that right?
Yeah.
Nice. So yeah, rather than load 1,500 panels, right now, I'll just go ahead and show you what I would see in my folder. So here's the Canopy final coming from the live session. And I'll take a look at this in preview mode. The panels end up being about 1,500, and they're beautiful triangles that I'm going to show you here in Revit. They're just flipping on the pre-baked one that we loaded. So again, I've got the coloration here as you know, the specialty equipment object style is set to orange, so it kind of stands out. But these are all loaded in from Rhino, and like I was just kind of indicating there at the tooltip, they show with the specialty equipment category, and that's great. So now I can, you know, at least do some scheduling and keynoting and tagging workflows from those panels. So here's my schedule showing each one individually. You can see the family comes with the name of that data exchange. So it is possible to start filtering on it. And then each of the individual panels has a unique name to go with the unique GUID. So of course that can be overridden. But now you can start to add additional metadata here in Revit around, what is the keynote for this particular piece of geometry family, as well as description and comments, and anything else that's going to be helpful as you kind of document this design. And the other thing you can do, of course, is start to create specialty 3D views and tagging these elements as well, so that you can, again, just kind of have a little bit more rich data about it in Revit. And this is a durable connection, so it is possible to update as invariably we go back and forth about these panels, either on their size or their location. We can update our exchanges as we go from V1 to V2, or all the way through to V6. These are dynamic over time. So just to wrap up part of this demo, I want to show the same data exchanges loaded into Inventor. And I think this is more information than an Inventor customer, fabricator in Inventor would need. But I want to illustrate the point of the one-to-many connection that Philippe was talking about. That the same data exchange that I shared with Japhy initially for context can be loaded into Inventor. That's what we mean by neutral data. The data itself should be able to load into any application that has a connector which can understand that data. And the roof from Rhino as well, this canopy can be loaded from Rhino. So, it's not a connection between Revit and Inventor, it's a connection between Rhino and a data exchange, and that data exchange should be able to be read into various contexts. So just wanted to illustrate information coming from Rhino, information coming from Revit, and information from Inventor could also contribute into this workflow Japhy and I are doing in Rhino and Revit. So I think we want to pause there. And Philippe, any questions or comments that are coming in?
Yeah, there are a couple. Tobias or Japhy, can you guys talk about how updates occur? I know you showed that, but can you talk about how we're just passing the changes in a little bit more along those lines? Questions.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of skipped through some stuff for the sake of time, trying to make this a minute by minute workflow. But as you saw, there was like a version 1, version 2, version 3, and that updates the geometry, the existing geometry, and then any additional or removed geometry are going to be updated as well. So it is a true connection where I have the latest export or view exchange from the Revit file.
Yeah, that's the part that I'd add too, is we call it a delta update. So it's only updating the things that changed in that latest version, as opposed to updating the entire data exchange. So if elements were removed, those are considered a delta. If elements are modified, of course, those are a delta. And then if elements are added, those are considered a delta. But things that don't meet any of those 3 criteria are just left alone. So they don't take up processing time.
Great, thanks, guys. I'm gonna just, Tobias, I know you have some other connectors that we want to share. I wanted to cover a couple of more questions before then. One that seems to have come up a couple of times, which we didn't cover, but is an important piece. It's in our documentation. I'll just share my screen really quickly, and I want to confirm that everyone can see before I.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah. Okay.
Confirmed.
Confirmed. All right. So some folks might be running into authorization issues with some of the connectors. So this will be the case with potentially the case with the Rhino connector and the Power Automate connector. You need to have someone who has admin access to your Autodesk Docs project here. So you can do that if you have admin access. This account admin will show up. And I'll go to that. And what you need to do is go to applications here. This shows all the potential integrations you can have with Autodesk Construction Cloud. But the ones that we're concerned with, if you scroll down, let's see, where is it here? There we go. I passed it. So there's the Data Exchange Rhino connector here. You need to go in there and activate it. We already obviously have it activated for this demo and this project. You need to do that for those third-party these third-party connectors, even though they're developed by Autodesk. This is a permissioning and security just piece that is part of Autodesk Docs in the Construction Cloud. So for some of you running into issues where you have your Data Exchange connector in Rhino, it's working, you can open it up, but you can't access your accounts or projects, this might be the issue. Let me take a look if I think there's some other questions here. One, question, can Data Exchange help to bring in complex shapes like solid spirals, for instance, in order to create a spiral staircase from Rhino to Revit native elements so that they can be rebarable, for instance?
So we run into that a lot with the Rhino inside Revit. And like I said, the big thing you're gonna have is tolerance with like a complex shape. So it's going to be a direct shape in that stair category, just like the Exchange connector is going to do. I don't know how they're doing their import, because Revit actually has a couple ways it imports. With Rhino inside Revit, it tries all three, and then we'll actually show you the errors and the geometry where it's too small or it's got a invalid surface of some sort. So I assume that they like right now the geometry is limited. It's not taking in meshes for the Data Exchange. I assume that they're going to be adding in these more robust geometry translations, so you get you'd end up getting a mesh translation of your complex geometry, where in 2023 it's nice because they took off the where before, when you imported the mesh, you saw all the the interior lines. 2023 those are hidden, so you actually get a really nice looking shape for your drawings that is represented, even though it's not truly that geometry. Hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and another piece to throw in there, with the Revit connector, it's going to bring in the geometry as direct shape, like Japhy was saying. With the Dynamo connector that's in public beta right now, there are a lot of utilities there that can let you drive a little bit more native behavior. So if it's a parameter-driven interop that you want to do, of course, you could pipe those parameters into native Revit objects using Dynamo. But in the case of some complex geometry, like it sounds like you're working with, you could push that geometry into a family and then have a little bit more control over it. For instance, I think you can load solid geometry into that family as opposed to direct shape. So you probably get better results that way. And you can also categorize and subcategorize that family. And that might be more what you're going for than the Revit connector we were just showing today.
Couple of thanks, guys. Another question that's come up from a couple of folks I responded earlier, but it might have been lost in the chat. Can you guys speak to the differences between Rhino Inside Revit and these data exchange connectors?
Yeah.
Guys?
Sorry. So Rhino Inside Revit uses the Revit API. So it gives you component level access. So if you want to add a wall by curve, you can do that. Whereas this connector isn't giving you access to the Revit API. It's a true exchange format. So it's going to be much more, like Felipe said, much more granular in your exporting, but it's not interacting with the Revit API on the user level. Whereas Dynamo, Rhino Inside Revit, you are actually visually programming something to Revit to do something, or in Rhino Inside Revit, going back and forth. Where, yeah, the exchange is just a data and geometry exchange. I hope that answers it.
Yeah, I'd break it on two dimensions. The first one, Japhy hit perfectly, kind of a complexity question. So these connectors aren't intended to be very straightforward. Just navigate to an exchange, click, and watch it load. So very little input or data mapping or low code required in order to get interop going. And then the second dimension is around collaboration. So I'm not a Revit Inside expert. Leave that one to Japhy. But my understanding is you need to have both Revit and Rhino running on the same machine in order to kind of have that interop happening. And what we were demonstrating today was, an example where you've got different people at different companies operating on different machines. And that's where the data exchange comes in handy, that you're traversing company boundaries and needing to collaborate, across different machines.
Yeah, and I guess another aspect is that this connector is going to give you abilities that you can't do in Revit alone, you can't do in Rhino alone. But with the connector, it's a novel workflow. And then Rhino Inside Revit can't do the things that the connector does necessarily. But it does something completely new. So, and that's where you can actually bring in the Grasshopper connector, which is exactly kind of what we was shown, but their Autodesk made Grasshopper components, and the same thing with the Dynamo has its own data exchange connector. So.
Great, thanks, guys. There are a lot of questions coming in. I just want to let folks know who are listening in. We do have a FAQ page that I'll show in a few minutes here. We'll take those questions and then we'll add those to that FAQ, because there are some that are really good questions that we don't yet have posted there. So we'll make sure to do that after this webinar. Tobias, can we briefly show the Power Automate integration? There was a question around Power BI, which is similar but different. But let's look at this connector. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is another thing to point out about the previous question too. We're showing Revit to Rhino working, and of course that's the intent with Rhino Inside. The data exchange does kind of free up this geometry and properties to be utilized in other ways in other places too. So Revit to Rhino is very popular, important workflow. Like Carlos was saying at the beginning, a lot of people are trying to crack that nut of how to speed up workflows between Revit and Rhino. And another aspect is freeing up some of the metadata from Rhino, and being able to use that in other business workflows too. So that's where this Power Automate connector comes in. This is the Power Automate web UI, and I've navigated to the data exchange nodes and sort of example workflows that are here. So there are a couple of triggers, such as when a data exchange is created, you can trigger some automated workflow. And when a data exchange is updated, you can trigger an automated workflow. And I'm just going to show you a simple example of using this one. Actually, it's a manual trigger, which is great for debugging and testing your workflow ahead of setting it up for automation. There's a very simple node about getting the actual exchange and the properties from it. So this is the pre-baked final canopy that Japhy had sent me previously. And you use a pretty straightforward folder and file picker UI to navigate through Autodesk docs and get that exchange. And then once you've got it, it's a pretty straightforward node here as well to add rows into a table for each element in that exchange. And so you browse SharePoint and you find a spreadsheet that's there, and you select a table that you've already got in that spreadsheet as well. And from there, you just choose the parameters that are inside that exchange that you care about, and you can map those into the different columns on the table. And it's pretty cool. Power Automate has this UI to find the parameters that exist in that exchange, from upstream in this workflow. So these are all the metadata that I've got access to that I can load up and use in either a Teams notification or a Slack notification, or this Excel spreadsheet, or even Power BI, additional things. These are straightforward. These are the three properties that Japhy attached to those panels in Rhino. And I'll just jump over here to the spreadsheet where the panels themselves are the rows, and then the columns are the values that came from, I guess you generated those in Grasshopper, pushed them into Rhino as custom attributes on each panel. And now we can read those out here into an Excel spreadsheet. So I love this example because it's showing data from Rhino going into Microsoft's Power Automate and Excel spreadsheet. So, not even an Autodesk application is one of the endpoints. The data exchange itself is stored in Autodesk docs, but the data exchange is intending to connect disparate apps that aren't necessarily Autodesk apps. So yeah, now you've got access to this information, and this spreadsheet could be a data source for a Power BI dashboard if that's the desired workflow.
Awesome, and I will put maybe Tobias says I'm gonna switch over to sharing just our cover page as we have 5 minutes left to give some more information on how to access these. Would you mind throwing the Autodesk University presentation that we did on Power Automate? That might help some folks who are interested in leveraging Power Automate and connecting it to tools like you showed, like Excel and Power BI. We do have a Power BI example there as well.
You bet.
Wonderful. Okay, so with 5 minutes left, I'm going to switch over to sharing my screen to cover how you can access data exchanges today. All right, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. So if you go to aps.autodesk.com, that stands for Autodesk Platform Services, go to Solutions and Data Exchange, which Tobias or Matt or Gaurav, if you don't mind posting this link as well, that would be great. You can get access to the information you need regarding data exchanges. We have this cover page is really for everyone from end users to the computational designers who might be using our Dynamo and Grasshopper connectors down the line to developers. This page covers our connectors that we offer. It has links to the API documentation and coming soon SDK documentation that will allow you as a developer to build your own connectors or to possibly build on the connectors that we release. So that's kind of for developers. But if you scroll down here, we've got data exchange connectors. You can click on this link. That'll take you to our app store where you can, oops, that's the wrong thing. Just click on that, where you can take a look at the exchange connectors that we have. Note the one that Tobias showed with Inventor is actually embedded within that product, so it doesn't show up here. But you'll see that the Revit and Rhino connectors are in tech preview. So if I go and click on that, you can directly download that for Revit 2023 and the same for Rhino 7. We do also have the Power Automate connector. You can actually just log into Microsoft Power Automate and access the connector directly through there. For our Grasshopper and Dynamo connectors, these are in public beta. So you do need to go and click on this link. That will redirect you to our public beta forum. So once you get redirected, you log in. If you don't have login, super easy to create one. This is where we're going to be putting early stage public beta connectors. So we'll be adding some more on here over the next few months and year plus. And you'll get to this page and you go simply to build downloads, and you can download those two connectors there. Something else I did want to show you was we do have our public roadmap available. So you can go click on that in that same page here. You can view what is released. There's some brief information here. A lot of this will be redirecting to the App Store if you need more details, but you can click through all of these that are available. You can check out what is in progress. So some notable items that are in progress, we're making some significant updates to our Inventor connector. We're planning to provide BIM 360 support for data exchanges. So you can take a look at what is in progress, as well as what is under consideration. So we do have a few more connectors to add here, but you can already see some that we are considering working on. And if you do have any, let's say you really do want an AutoCAD connector, you can vote on these. And you can say, hey, this is, maybe not super important. It's maybe a nice to have for our workflows. And you can add some reasoning why, any feature requests you might have, and that funnels directly to our product team. You can also submit new ideas here. So if you have a new idea for a new connector that you don't see here, you can also go through this portal. And again, that gets submitted directly to our product team. So those are ways that you can use data exchanges. You can start to investigate if you're a developer or public API, public beta API, and then you can start to see, hey, what's the Autodesk product team working on? And then, of course, there's a little bit more information here, but I will leave that for you all to explore. Anything to add, Tobias and Japhy, before we wrap things up here?
No, just thank you, and yeah, great job.
Well, it was
thank you for having us, and looking forward to talking again maybe in the future around the Dynamo and Grasshopper connectors. It'd be awesome to show some slightly different workflows with those.
Yeah, I think our plan is to have a few more of these webinars based on the new connectors that we'll be putting out. You can actually go and see on that landing page, scroll down all the way, you can see a demo video. It's pretty brief, of the Grasshopper and Dynamo connectors to give you just a quick overview. And again, you can join that public beta to actually use those beta connectors.
Very cool. Excellent solution, excellent presentation. Many thanks, Japhy, Tobias, and Philippe, and also to the rest of your team that were also very active on the chat. Today, the chat was really, really active. I think you cover all the questions already. Otherwise, they can contact you directly because we are running out of time. They can visit your website, go to the FAQ, or probably there is a tech support email. But again, I think we enjoy it a lot. All the people are saying that this looks like a great interoperability tool. I think they know now the difference between this data exchange connector and Rhino inside Revit and how it works via cloud, multi-user. We as McNeel, as I mentioned before, we are really happy also that this new connector is available. And many thanks again to all the speakers, to the viewers. Remember, this webinar has been recorded and it's available on the same link right now. So you can, if you missed any part of it or the beginning, just refresh the page and you will be able to watch it since the beginning. So have a nice day in the States, a nice evening in Europe, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.